Good morning. My name is Helen Christians and I will be your MC this morning. Welcome to the Humanists of Greater Portland Sunday morning meeting. Our topic at today's meeting, what is ranked choice voting, especially addresses the humanist commitments of ethical development and social justice. HGP is an all-volunteer group, and I mean 100% volunteers that we pull off these programs for decades is pretty amazing. And this all-volunteer group believes strongly in freedom of speech. But it's our tradition to have music at our first Sunday of the month meetings, and the Spring Chickens are our featured performers this morning and are accompanied by Pete and Paul Barquette. They've entertained us this morning before the meeting with some wonderful music, and I want to welcome them all back now for our first Sunday music in September. Come on in, Spring Chickens, and what song you going to do for us?
We like the message about the Irish, certainly of Ireland, but it also speaks, we think, in general to everyone when money begins to take over whole society.
So that's the thing, yeah. Living in a place with time, living in a place where reality is, standing on a big broad line, watching it all go by. Oh, you're taking it all away. The music, the tongue, and the old refrain, you're coming here to play, but you're pulling the roots from a dying age. Waiting for the wheel to turn. Remember the Volcano Moor, reaching for the sky from the barren shore, watching o'er the village of Burns, counting the days till the gale kept calm. Well, stranger gets it now, sitting like a king with his glow from the south. Don't you feel the waves of rail washing away the soul from the land? You come from the clearances, my friend. Suddenly our history is coming to life again. We feel the breeze from the soul to come, and up and down this coast, we're waiting for the wheel to turn. Free were the fields of fern, free was the fishing in the cove of care, empty were the hounds of old, empty for the sake of the summer's cause. We're taking it all away. The music, the tongue, and the old refrain, you're coming here to play, but you're pulling the roots from a dying age. Here come the clearances, my friend. Silently our history is coming to life again. We feel the breeze from the storm to come, and up and down this coast, we're waiting for the wheel to turn. Is my friend, up and down this coast, we're waiting for the wheel to turn.
Today's program, What is Ranked Choice Voting, is quite timely. In the New York Times article on September 2nd, reporters Blake Hornshell and Charles Homans wrote that Democratic candidate Mary Pelota's victory in a special election on Wednesday makes her the first Democrat in nearly half a century to represent Alaska in the House of Representatives. She won with an upbeat campaign that appealed to Alaskans' interest and the electoral independence streak. But Ms. Pelota will become the first Alaskan native to serve in Congress and the first woman to hold a House seat. But they believe that she won over Ms. Palin because of the new voting system in Alaska, the ranked choice voting. And Kit, oh my goodness, Kit, I forgot to ask you how to successfully pronounce your last name. What is it?
Muehlman.
Muehlman, Kit Muehlman, and Sol Mora are here to give us an answer to our questions about ranked choice voting and this, hopefully, including this Alaskan win. Kit Muehlman is from Bellingham, Washington, is a volunteer speaker for Fair Vote Washington. She became politically active because of the ugliness that she observed in politics. She volunteers as a speaker on ranked choice voting so that she can sleep at night. And Sol Mora was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 6, growing up in Salem, Oregon, among immigrants and undocumented communities. Sol became an advocate for basic rights and equitable representation of the disenfranchised community. Sol works with building power for communities of color. Kit and Sol, thank you so much for joining us this morning. From what I understand, Kit, you're going to start off the presentation and Sol will close. So welcome. This is wonderful that you're here, and thank you for helping us with understand what is this ranked choice voting.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me, Helen and David. It's really great to be here. Ranked choice voting has become a passion of mine. Like Helen said, I was so upset at the ugliness in national politics, and I was never very interested in politics because it seemed so unpleasant. And then I remembered my brother telling me about ranked choice voting, and I remembered I could see what a difference that could make. That could make a systemic, fundamental difference in our elections, in our politics, and just make things work better. Mm-hmm. So I will share my screen and start talking about ranked choice voting. So I'm a volunteer. I volunteer quite a lot with ranked choice voting in Washington. And what is ranked choice voting? It's a simple improvement to the way we vote. With ranked choice voting, you can rank the candidates in the order you prefer. First choice, over in the ballot over on the right, it's the first choice is in the first column. They picked hemlock. And second choice, cedar. And third choice over here is pine. And if your first choice comes in last, so if hemlock comes in last, this voter's ballot will now count for cedar. So, and if you think about it, we do this all the time. If you go out to a restaurant and you want the halibut and they don't have it, you don't go home, you order something else. So it really is sort of, it's somewhat intuitive. And to start with, you're going to all have the opportunity to have an election. And this election is for summer pies. You got strawberry, rhubarb, blueberry, peach, and cherry. So I know it's a hard decision, but I'm going to ask you all to vote on your favorite, your second favorite, and so on. And there will be two ways that you can vote. The people who are at Friendly House, you can vote on a piece of paper. Hopefully you have a piece of paper and pencil nearby, or do it in your head, or anyone can do it like this. This is the simplest way to do it. The other way to do it is digitally. And you can have a vote ballot like this. Now I'm putting a link in the chat. So if you want to vote digitally, there's a summer pie election in the chat. So if you vote digitally, your first choice will go in the first column and the second choice will go in the second column, and so on. And you people on paper, I'm going to go back to the pie so you can remember what our candidates are. Is anyone having any trouble?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure, go ahead.
Keep voting for the same pie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Great question. Thank you for that question. If you have a piece of paper, you can do that. The app won't let you do that. The thing is, it won't help your candidate at all if you vote for the same candidate, first choice, second choice, third choice. And you'll that will become clear, I think, when I show you how we tabulate.
Okay. And then they've got to press that submit button, right, Kit? once they've finished
Yes,
voting?
and then submit. Yes.
What appeared on mine was a bar graph after I submitted.
Yes, great. So close that out and come back to the Zoom meeting, and then
Okay.
I'm fishing around for the. Oh, I know what I remember what I do.
It's okay. We're doing fine.
I'm
So,
doing some fancy footwork on my little
Mhm.
bitty laptop here.
Mhm.
Okay.
so folks, go ahead and vote. We've got 35 of us should be able to put in the electronic vote.
Yes.
And
Oh, good. It looks like we've had 15 votes have come in.
oh, good. And then the folks at Friendly House, if you have a piece of paper, write them down. And if not, just kind of rank them in your head. So you'll be able to play along here. I love.
Right. Well, it's playing along is the
Mhm.
thing. Yeah. Okay. So if everyone can come back to the Zoom screen, and we will tabulate the votes right here using this internet app that works pretty well. It has nice colors anyway. So what we're looking at is the first choice votes. I've been using this for other presentations. So there's 94 votes in here. I didn't stuff the ballot box. I've been using it for other presentations. So these are the first choice.
Kate, it's kind of like we're a polling place, one polling place, but there's many people voting.
There
Yeah.
we go. There we go. Thank you. So it in order for a candidate to win, for a pie to win, it's going to need to get past this 47 vote mark, this dotted green line on the right. And if a candidate did get across that on the first round, we'd be done. But no one did. So what we're going to do is eliminate the last place candidate. That would be Strawberry. So if you voted for Strawberry, only only if you voted for your Strawberry, you're now going to get your second choice vote counted. So we're in round one here, and I'm going to click this arrow on the right, and we're going to go to round two and see where the Strawberry votes go. And they split sort of all over the place. 3 went to rhubarb, 2 went to cherry, 2 went to blueberry, and 6 went to peach. So peach did a good job talking to the strawberry voters, and it really helped peach pull ahead of blueberry. So now we still don't have anyone at the halfway mark. So the lowest vote getter, which is blueberry, will be eliminated in this round. And we'll go to the next round and see where those voters go. The blueberry voters will get their second choice votes counted. And the strawberry voters, they're still in this. They're going to get their third choice votes counted. So we'll go to the round 3 and see what happens. Now peach is really pulling ahead. And you notice rhubarb was ahead on the first round by far, but it's not really picking up a lot of second and third choice votes. We still don't have anyone with 50%. So the people in this line here in the cherry line are going to get their next choice, whatever their next choice is, whatever's still in the running. And we'll go to the round 4. And peach came from behind, which is sort of unusual in a ranked choice election. Usually the one who places first in the first round wins in the last round. But I picked rhubarb because it's a big favorite with many people, but it's not a second choice for very many people. So let's go back to the very beginning. And you people who have paper ballots, you can follow along and see how your vote's going. If you had rhubarb or peach, you stayed with your first choice the whole time. And cherry, blueberry, and strawberry, their second choice votes came in. So you see, someone asked, suppose I voted for the same candidate for all 5 places. If your candidate was Strawberry and you voted it for all five columns, and it comes in last, when we go to the second round, you don't have a second choice. And so there's round 2. You can follow your own vote. They're color coded. And third round, Peach is just pulling up a lot of second choice and third choice votes. And the final round, we have a clear winner. Peach is way over the top. So if we'd only had Rhubarb and Peach in the election, Peach would win. So I'm going to say, are there any questions right now?
I have a question, and then for folks, if you have a question, if you're from Friendly House, you just let Dave know, and he'll get you on a mic. And if you're on Zoom, you either put your name in the chat and come on live, or put your question in the chat and I'll read it. So like folks get organized for some questions. I have a question. What about of the 5, I just can only, the 5th, I wouldn't vote for that person or that pie, like Strawberry. I would not vote for Strawberry. So what if I only vote 4 times? Is that
in this election, that works absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
You would still, your vote would still make it to the last,
Mm-hmm.
because there are 2 in the last.
And then you could I suppose you could put 2 for, my 5th vote could just be one of the ones that I really liked. Also, I can, but I don't have to vote for everybody.
You don't have to vote for everyone. That's true. Absolutely true. Yes. And people often do that. They say, I only want one candidate and that's it. However, when people get used to ranked choice voting,
Mm-hmm.
if they have one candidate they really despise, then they will rank all the other candidates instead.
Okay. Well, we do have some questions coming in, and Hank Robb, he's on Zoom. Come on in, Hank.
So let me see if I have this right. If Cherry, for example, was the lowest, I've forgotten which one was the lowest, but if it were the lowest and everybody wanted it for the second choice, it would be out of the running.
That is correct. That is correct. Ranked choice voting measures like the strong support in the first round. And then in the following rounds, it registers broad support. So that is one thing that ranked choice voting doesn't do. No voting method is perfect. And ranked choice voting, in my mind, is the one that fulfills more of the qualities we need in a good election method.
I'm not complaining, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
That's a great question. That's a really insightful question. You're following elections well?
Well, I was introduced to this system in a professional organization. There was a guy named Hare, a person named Hare. It was called the Hare system. And so that was 25 years ago. So anyway, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Someone wanted the question repeated. They said, suppose there's one candidate that comes in last,
Mm-hmm.
like Strawberry, but Strawberry is the second choice for all the other candidates. Does Strawberry still get eliminated? Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Mike Brochet, I bet it's Mike Brochet from Friendly House, has the question, and Mike, come on in if you want to, but the question he has is, what about write-in candidates? How do you handle that? And Mike, do you need any more clarification to Kit?
Oh, that.
Well, I'm a member of the Cake Party. That's in Canada, so never mind. But no, it's pretty clear.
Yes, you can have write-in candidates, and if you have a well-organized write-in campaign that has a lot of the same write-in,
Mm-hmm.
they would make it onto the ballot.
Okay.
Okay, well, how would that happen? Would these write-in candidates be submitted to the election officials to
Well,
get it on the ballot?
So in, I don't know about Oregon, but in Washington, a write-in candidate has to register with the Secretary of State and be approved by whatever criteria it is. And then people can write them in on the write-in line.
Okay, thank you.
I still prefer cake.
We have a question from Ranga. Ranga, can you come in, please? You're online.
I have a question which is
Yes.
different from the ranked one. It's a different form. Can I ask it now or we'll do it later?
Go ahead. What do you think, Kit?
Okay. What
Yeah.
I am saying is, suppose I have a scheme like this, namely that people are given two choices, one a positive vote and a negative vote. Most of the time there are two people. Therefore, you can give positive vote the person you like, and the person you don't like, you can give a negative vote. Now, finally, when you count it, positive vote is plus, the other one is reduce. So you will, therefore, the person who is disliked most would not get through. So how does it, is that is a feasible thing? And what do you think of such a scheme?
That's another voting method. I've heard of it. I'm not real familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't really speak
To
well
that one.
on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Vale has a question. I think I'll make sure I've got my line right here. I have heard that the U.S. had a similar voting method in some places about 100 years ago, but after a few years, they all abandoned it. Is that true? And was it because communists and fascists sometimes won?
We will get to that. That's
Okay.
very good. Yes.
So is
Yes,
it true?
Yes, I have some slides for that. I don't know about the fascists, but there was a communist elected to the House of Representatives.
Okay. I have a question here from Kathy Moyd. What about 3-member nonpartisan districts with lots of candidates? Which is what Portland is proposing. How many candidates should voters be able to rank?
You know what? You're getting to some great questions that we're going to talk about later in the presentation. I will, and Saul will as well.
Okay. All right, we'll get to that.
I think it's probably a good time to continue. Where is ranked choice voting used in the United States? So fortunately, many places in the United States have used ranked choice voting in some way. There have been over 500 ranked choice elections in the United States. So the state of Maine uses ranked choice voting for federal elections and the presidential primary, and Alaska has just started to use ranked choice voting statewide. In other states, it's used in presidential primaries, in local elections, in party elections, and in military and overseas ballots. So here's the 3 candidates that were running for the House of Representatives in Alaska. This was the election just last week. The 3 candidates were from left to right, Mary Peltola, Sarah Palin, and Nick Besich. And voters could vote for first choice, second choice, and third choice. So let's see how it went. So here's the results of everyone's first choices. So Mary Peltola got 40%. It's over here on the, I guess I can't, whoops, back, whoops. Okay, sorry. So Mary Peltola got 40%. And Sarah Palin got 31.3%. Nick Begich got 28.5%. So Mary Peltola has a pretty strong lead. She's got a lot of strong first choice support. But Sarah Palin and Nick Begich are both Republicans. So if we just took this election and said Mary Peltola is ahead, she wins, it looks like a lot of people might be unsatisfied. So let's see what happens when Nick Begich is eliminated and his votes, his second choice votes, are transferred to Mary Peltola and Sarah Palin. So the pink votes are Nick Begic's votes, second choice votes. And Sarah Palin got most of them, but Mary Peltola also picked up a significant amount, and that pushed Mary Peltola over the finish line. So people have been saying, well, Sarah Palin encouraged, was saying, don't use the system, it's a bad system. And indeed, about 25% of Nick Bezic's voters did not make a second choice. So they didn't have any say in the final round here. But we now have the first Native American congressperson from Alaska. So ranked choice voting, like I said, has been used in over 500 elections in the United States. And 70% of voters approve of ranked choice voting in their exit polls. And many of these exit polls were taken on the first use of ranked choice voting. 71% of voters rank multiple candidates, and 90% of voters say they understand ranked choice voting and that it's simple to use. And in Alaska, something like 99.2% of the ballots were valid, which is about normal. That shows that people didn't have any trouble actually using the ballot. So one of the major benefits of ranked choice voting is that it gives voters a stronger voice and more choices. So Minneapolis has used ranked choice voting since 2009, and exit polls show that voters overwhelmingly like it. So in places that use ranked choice voting, we see more women, more people of color, third parties, and independents running in elections, because they don't have to worry about being a spoiler, about pulling votes away from their candidates who are similar to them. And voters then have more real choices because they can vote for their favorite candidates knowing that they have a backup choice. And one of my favorite advantages of ranked choice voting is that it encourages positive, civil, and issues-focused campaigns. So the candidates in these photos are opponents, but they are doing some of their campaign events together, and they're focusing on the positions they have in common. And so why aren't they running negative campaigns? Well, imagine that you're out knocking on doors, canvassing for your candidate, and you come to a house with your opponent's yard sign. So in a regular election, you just leave. These people have made up their minds. You're not going to waste your time. But in a ranked choice election, you can still ask for the second place vote. And so you go ahead and talk to them and see what you have in common. And that's what works in a ranked choice election. So we covered that. So another important way of using ranked choice voting is to get fair representation in a council. So up to this point, and in the election that we just did, we talked about electing a single candidate, like in a mayor. But we can also use ranked choice voting to elect a city council. So this is called proportional ranked choice voting. And Cambridge, Massachusetts has been using it since 1941. So here's how they do in Cambridge. And instead of electing each council member in a separate race, the candidates for all the seats run together for a pool, in a pool for city council. And the voters rank their choices on a ranked choice ballot. And the top candidates get seats on the council. And what it does is to ensure proportional representation across the whole city. And usually over 90% of the voters get at least one council member they support. So voters can see that their vote matters. And as the city votes on the pool of candidates as a whole, there's no drawing districts and there's no arm wrestling about district lines, and gerrymandering can't happen. So I know many of you know what gerrymandering is, but I'll just review. It's the drawing of legislative districts to favor one political group. And the name came from Elbridge Gerry, the governor of Massachusetts in 1812, who signed the bill that created this misshapen district. So it's shaped like a salamander, and so it was satirically titled a gerrymander. And it did the job. It changed the balance of power in the Massachusetts State Senate, giving a majority to Gerry's party, the Democrat Republicans, even though the Federalists had the most votes statewide. But, you know, districts don't have to be shaped like this to determine election results. So district lines determine representation. The district lines determine which party gets the representative. So in each of these shifting frames, the voters stay right where they are. And all that's changing are the lines and who gets elected. Now, we just came through a long redistricting process in the states, full of wrangling and about district lines, and it was really unsatisfying in Washington. When you have only one representative per district, people are ready to fight about the district lines. Proportional ranked choice voting with multi-member districts makes drawing districts much easier and more fair. So on the left, we have our current system, and on the right, the fair representation system proposed for Portland. So in the current system, when only one representative per district is elected, the largest block of voters, whether it's racial, political, or economic, the largest block elects the representative. And the rest of the people don't feel like they get someone who truly represents them. And on the left, when you elect multiple representatives per district, more people get to elect a representative. And proportional ranked choice voting is a practical way to get fair representation. Also, when you have fair representation through proportional ranked choice voting, gerrymandering just doesn't work. You can't manipulate the elections by drawing district lines. So why proportional RCV, ranked choice voting? Get automatic fair representation, no wrangling over district lines. More voter satisfaction because more voters elect one or more of their first choices. And candidates can draw voters from a larger area, and voters don't need to live in a cluster to vote together. So those yellow voters in our example, enough of them live together that you could draw a district to get them a representative. But if they were scattered all over the place, it wouldn't work. So someone's astute question about ranked choice voting a century ago. Yes, it was much more, it was beginning to grow 100 years ago. So ranked choice voting is not as new as you might think. So during the early 20th century, 24 cities used a form of ranked choice voting that gives fair and proportional representation. New York City elected their first Black city council members ever beginning in 1937. And the first city council member, Adam Clayton Powell, went on to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. And in his place, Benjamin Harris, who was elected 3 times starting in 1943, took the place of Adam Clayton Powell. And the Democratic and Republican parties made numerous attempts to repeal this voting method, and they succeeded in 1947 by inflaming fear of the Communist Party. And Benjamin Davis was associated with the Communist Party. So after the repeal of proportional ranked choice voting, the very next election returned the city back to an all-white male city council. Now, Ohio, you might be surprised. So Ohio had 5 cities that used proportional RCV: Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, Ashtabula, and Hamilton. All the cities that adopted a proportional ranked choice voting began to elect members of minority groups in far greater numbers: Blacks, Italians, Irish, Polish, and women. And the backlash against the visible presence of ethnic minority elected officials fueled persistent efforts to repeal this voting method. And by 1957, all 5 cities had repealed proportional ranked choice voting. The only city in the United States that did not repeal proportional RCV was, like I said, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And the citizens of Cambridge, Massachusetts have enjoyed proportional ranked choice voting since 1941. All right, thank you very much for this. I am one more thing. In addition to Albany, in addition to Cambridge, 2 more cities have adopted proportional ranked choice voting: Albany, California, and East Point, Michigan. So in my opinion, proportional ranked choice voting is the big payoff for ranked choice voting. Okay, so with that background, I'll hand this off to Saul Mora, who can tell you more about what's happening with the Portland proposed legislation.
Okay. Hi, Saul.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Come on
Thank
in.
you so much for having me here. I will just start off with a quick introduction before I get into my slide deck. My name is Sol Mora. I use she, her pronouns, and I am here with the Coalition of Communities of Color. I am the Civic Engagement Manager at that organization. And then specifically for the Portland effort, we do have a Yes campaign that has officially launched, and that name is Portland United for Change. I will drop our website into the chat momentarily, but it's if you just search Portland United for Change, it should come up. And in that capacity, I am serving as the campaign manager. So I want to go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. So again, I am here with Portland United for Change. So let's go ahead and talk about what is being proposed in the Portland specific context. So I wanted to start off by talking about how exactly we got here. So every 10 years, the Portland City Council appoints 20 community members that live in Portland to an independent group called the Charter Commission. The Charter Commission is responsible for looking at our city charter, which functions like our city constitution, and looking at the problems that exist with our current structure and coming up with recommendations. So the current Charter Commission was appointed in December of 2020. And so over the past 18 months, they have been speaking with Portlanders, working with different community organizations to host events and learn about, what is not working for our city. And they proposed these recommendations to the Portland ballot. So as of June of 2022, this is going to be directly on the ballot for Portland voters. Portland voters will have the final say in whether this change will get approved. So if this does get approved by Portland voters, the measure is going to amend our city charter to do 3 things. The first thing that it will do is establish a mayor-council government structure. The second thing that this measure does is it will create district representation with an expanded city council size. And the third thing it does is that it will allow voters to rank candidates in their order of preference in one election. So let's go through each of those individual parts just to make sure that we have a better understanding of what they are. So first of all, what do we even have as our current form of government? Portland is the last major city in the entire country that uses a commission form of government. In the commission form of government, our elected officials, not only do they focus on passing laws, not only do they approve how public dollars are spent, but they also have administrative hats. And that is very uncommon when you're looking at other city governments across the United States. So because they also have administrative hats, that means that they're spending most of their day managing city services. We're talking about the Water Bureau, the Fire Department, Parks and Recreation, all of those really technical services that Portlanders rely on. And our current city council is being strained and simply doesn't have the capacity to focus on our city long term. So let's talk about the proposal, a mayor-council government. The biggest difference between what we have in our current government and this proposal is that we are now going to have a non-elected city administrator. A city administrator is someone who has the professional management expertise, how to manage a city, how to manage departments, city services, and coordinate on that delivery. So we are moving towards a system that has a specific branch of administration. So the city administrator, the way that they get appointed is that the mayor will make a nomination for who that candidate should be. There's an interview process, an extensive application process to get this person hired. And ultimately, the city council will approve that nomination the mayor is making with a simple majority. So both the mayor and the city council have a role in determining who the city administrator is. So now that we have someone directly focused on, managing the city services, that means that our city council has freed up their time to be a primary lawmaking body, to be able to go out into communities, to work with different organizations, small businesses, different communities, develop and pass policy. Also focus on amending and approving the budget, deciding how it should be spent. So the vision behind this government structure that the council will be able to meet relationships with the people that they represent. Most Portland, we can agree that they don't truly feel that city council members are integrated in the community. And the biggest reason is that when they're wearing administrative hats, they simply don't have time to do all of the things they're being tasked with. So a city council that truly is out in the community. So the last part of this government structure is the mayor. So the mayor will still be elected, they will still be representing the entire city, and their main responsibility will be to carry out the laws that the city council is passing and to carry out the budget. So they are still that person that people can look towards to hold politically accountable for the city's overall vision, because they're working to carry out those laws on a day-to-day basis. They will also work very closely with the city administrator, so they are supervising that individual on a day-to-day basis. I think that definitely helps to make sure that the city administrator is functioning to a certain performance level. Sometimes people get on what is between a city administrator that the mayor supervises and city manager. You may that term city manager, it's technically not here. So manager doesn't have daily supervision in the administrator. See here is kind of a hybrid mayor council government and a council manager to make sure that accountability was still being achieved and that efficiency with that professional management was also being achieved. All right, so I'm going to move on, but definitely, keep track of your questions to them. So the second part of this proposal is district representation. Right now, all of our city council members run for office at large. So that means that everyone in the city gets to vote for them if they are eligible, and ultimately when elected into this, they're representing the city. Look at council members historically, most of them are coming from the northeast parts of the city, the inner west, and the inner east. Most of our population currently resides in East Portland, in outer East Portland. That was part of the city that, and so historically it's been underrepresented. We don't have many council members that are truly representing that area as it stands. So the last piece I was going over was just talking about how in Portland history, we have only had 2 city council members that have lived east of 82nd Avenue. So clearly East Portland, outer East Portland is being heavily underrepresented. So with this part of the proposal, what it's doing is that it's increasing geographic representation. So for every part of the city that you live in, you will have that guaranteed city council member that frequents local businesses there, understands the issues, and just has, that better recognition of what residents need in that specific area. So we will have 4 districts in the city that will each elect 3 council members. That also means that as a voter, you have multiple avenues to make your concerns heard. Not only do you have 1 city council member that lives in your area, you have 3. And, I think it's important to recognize that not every city council member will share your values or champion your issues. And so this is just increasing the likelihood that you will be able to connect with 1 city council member that can directly work on championing your community's priorities. All right, so moving on to the last part, ranked choice voting. I won't spend too much time on this since Kit did such a great job. So ranked choice voting is a voting method that allows voters to rank candidates in their order of preference. We will be using this voting method to elect the mayor, the auditor, and the city council. So here is an example of a ballot. You're able to say, this is my first choice, second choice, and so on. I did see a question earlier where someone asked, how many candidates will Portlanders be able to rank on their ballot? This is not a decision that the body that came up with this proposal is deciding. It's actually up to county elections offices. However, in most jurisdictions that use this method, voters are allowed to rank up to 5 different candidates. So most likely it will be 5 because that number has been studied and it shows that it gives people more choices without making them feel that, it's too much, it's too overwhelming. So most likely voters will be able to rank up to 5 candidates. This is part of the implementation process. So if this passes in November, it will be up to the tri-county elections offices to make that determination. So with ranked choice voting, one of the biggest appeals is that it is increasing representation for minority groups and people that have not traditionally had access to representation. Right now, the threshold for candidates to get elected is 50% plus 1 out of the entire city. So that number can be inaccessible for candidates that don't have name recognition, if they're newer, if they don't have, access to financial resources and those types of connections. It's a lot more difficult for them to actually have a viable chance of getting elected. And so with this proposal, in each of these districts, the threshold for candidates to get elected will be 25% plus 1. With the city council members, we are using the form of proportional ranked choice voting. Proportional ranked choice voting means that there are multiple winners in one election. So instead of these being individual races, this will be one race for District 1, and all the candidates that are able to reach 25% plus 1 are the candidates that will get elected. And of course, the votes can be distributed depending on how the race is going. The candidate with the fewest votes is getting eliminated, and those get passed on to the next choice candidate. So it's still the same process, but it just means that you have multiple winners in one election. All right, so the last part I want to mention is that we are moving away from the May primary. So we will now be electing candidates in one general election. When you look at who tends to vote in the May primary, it's higher income voters, it tends to be homeowners, it tends to be white voters. And so this means that now a larger part of the electorate is getting to contribute to these decisions. And we will also have more voters participating in general. The May primary has lower turnout rates compared to the general election. And it's something that is incredibly, incredibly notable. And so this means that now we have more people participating and getting to contribute to that outcome. All right, so I want to spend just a second talking about the campaign effort to pass this measure. So I am also working, with this specific campaign. On the screen here, you see many of the organizations that have endorsed this measure: the ACLU of Oregon, the League of Women Voters, City Club of Portland, Urban League, some that are not listed on here: Leuna Local 737, the Portland Association of Teachers. We have a broad range of support from many organizations, and we are moving speed ahead towards the election and feel confident that this is something Portlanders can stand behind and pass at the ballot. So the last thing I will end on is just thinking about, if you feel passionate about this, if this is something that interests you, what are the ways that you can get involved? Being here at this event is a great start. Going out and talking to your community and your friends, spreading the word on social media, those are really easy and simple ways for more people to get informed about what's coming up on their ballot. You can request a presentation from the Charter Commission for an event. The Charter Commission is the group that shaped this proposal. They have all of the insight on the policy. They're very happy to come and present at a specific event. You can host your own house party or informational session. These are really fun ways to get your neighbors involved and just start having these conversations. You can write a letter to the editor to share your opinion. Those get submitted to the Portland Tribune, to the Oregonian, and just being able to spread more awareness about, what your specific position and thoughts are is a great way to get more visibility. The last thing I will mention is that, as part of the Yes campaign, we do have a match donation fund going on right now. So if you are able to contribute individual dollars, they will be matched up until September 10th. No, if you don't have it in your capacity, no worries at all, but I did just want to mention that very quickly. All right, so I am going to stop sharing my screen.
That was wonderful. And I've been very curious about, this is wonderful because the two of you covered two really important topics: the ranked choice voting, timely because of the Alaska election, and then also our own city government that I know is the charters being considered changes, which I strongly believe we need to do. So, Kathy had a question, and Kathy, you may need to clarify this just a little bit for me.
Yeah,
but
it was actually a statement and not a question.
Okay,
I actually
go ahead.
In addition to the votes that he had go to Palin and, second place votes and Patola, there were 11,000 that didn't go to anybody, which either means he didn't bother voting for second, that the people didn't bother voting for second place, or there were like 15 candidates who were also running who had also been eliminated, already been eliminated. But normally in a partisan election, his vote, most of his votes would have gone to Palin and she would have won. So the ranked choice voting normally would have overturned the results of the first round.
Mhm.
It was only because they apparently, I mean, there are people who didn't like Palin. There apparently were a whole lot of other reasons why Begich's votes did not just immediately go to the other Republican.
Mhm.
And while I have the floor, one of my question was going to be, our elections are nonpartisan, so there really is nothing that identifies, you know,
Right.
what constituency you're in. And my guess is we're going to have a lot of candidates. And
Probably.
that's my concern with only 5 votes. You don't even get to vote for 2 for each position.
So in the upcoming Portland election, if this plan passes, and this is going to be our new government structure, you're concerned about say that.
That with only 5 votes, you vote for the 3 that you want to win, but you can't even vote for the 3 that you want to come in second if you only have 5 votes.
Okay.
But Kathy, it sounds like you just used your 3 for the ones that you wanted first, but you didn't use vote 4 and 5.
No, I used 4 and 5, but that leaves, I don't have a second place vote for the third member.
This is great. Okay, this is great. So in a multi-winner election race, all the candidates for the city council will be on your ballot for your district. And you can pick the 5 that you most want to see on the council. You'll pick your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice, and your fourth choice, and your fifth choice. And all those votes will count. I'm going to put something in the chat because the tabulation is different in a multi-winner race. Let's see. And it's transparent. You can see it. Let's see. You can, there we go.
Okay.
I'm putting in a video. It's a 7 or 8 minute video that explains how the tabulation happens in a multi-winner race.
Okay.
They call it a single transferable vote. So everybody who votes gets 1 vote. But if one candidate comes up with like 70% of the first choice votes, they reallocate from the top. So they reallocate from the bottom and they reallocate from the top. And it is, I love it. I like math, and I just think it's so logical and so fair. But maybe you can watch that later, and I think that will answer your question.
Yeah.
No, I've seen this already. So
okay, great.
I was actually on the League of Women Voters for a while. I was on League of Women's Voters studying voting methods.
Oh, Kathy, the Oregon League of Women Voters has the greatest report on voting methods. I love it.
Yeah, I disagreed with it.
You do. Okay.
That's why I didn't stay on the committee. I actually think for some cases, star voting is actually preferable to ranked choice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that came up as a question here. Vale Humble has a question. Please compare ranked choice voting and star voting. Is that something one of you could do?
Well, I'm probably not the best person ever to do that. But
I can talk about it.
Great, so go ahead.
Yes. So star voting is a voting method that was created in Oregon. It was not, oh, sorry. Can you all see me? There we go. So it's a voting method that was created in Oregon specifically. So if you're talking to professors from around the world, it's still not very common. One of the reasons it's not as studied is because it hasn't been used in any official city council or mayoral election. Okay. So when we're talking about, which of these voting methods is sound, is proven, is tested, that would be ranked choice voting. We can look at examples across the United States. We can look at examples across the world. Star voting just doesn't have as much of those, research studies and papers to actually tell us what is the full effect if we're actually using this to elect city council members or a mayor. So I would say in my eyes, that's one of the biggest differences. You know, I think it's an interesting concept. So the biggest difference on the ballot when you're comparing it to ranked choice voting is that instead of getting to rank the candidates, you are rating them. So on a scale of 0 to 5, you can say, for this candidate, you know, they're a 5 to me. I really like them. They're my favorite. And you can do that for multiple candidates. So unlike having a specific order, you're able to say these two candidates are both a 5 in my eyes. So you can't do that for ranked choice voting because there's an order, you know, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't put two candidates in your 5th spot. So that tends to be one of the reasons that people like star voting, because you can rate two candidates the exact same score. However, what I will say is that, you know, if we're talking about this on a mathematical level, what tends to happen is something called regression to the mean. Most people will actually only stick to the two far ends of that rating scale. They'll say these candidates are a 0, these candidates are a 5. So you're actually not getting as much of that broad diversity in ballots that you see with ranked choice voting. And what happens is that for, you know, I would say a lot of communities that don't historically have the same type of voting power, they will just end up giving, you know, all the candidates, let's say a 5 that they agree with, which doesn't help to benefit them in the long run as much because you don't have the same level of nuance. With ranked choice voting, what you see happening is that, let's say, you know, for me, I'm a person of color. I'm going to put the first choice that I have for one of the candidates that is a little bit more in the lead. But then for my second and third choice, I'm going to vote for the candidates that I really wanted to win, the ones that actually, you know, share my values, that, let's say, are also people from my community. So if my first choice gets eliminated, I still have that, you know, those two other spots that I genuinely wanted to represent me. Whereas with star voting, I think what would end up happening is that people who haven't had access to representation will just say, oh, actually, these are all a 5 in my eyes. And as they start to get eliminated, you know, it's not the same level of nuance, if that makes sense. When you're tallying the votes with star voting, you do get to a point in the runoff where, you know, let's say that there are two top candidates. So whoever you marked on your ballot as having a higher rating, that's where your vote counts towards. So let's say that for candidate B, I gave them a 4. For candidate A, I gave them a 3. My ballot in the runoff would count for the candidate that I gave a higher rating to. So what happens when I gave the candidates in the runoff the same score? Let's say I gave them both a 4. My vote technically will not go towards either candidate because I gave them the exact same rating. So you do see wasted votes when it comes to the runoff of star voting if you gave two candidates the same exact rating. So I think there's a different type of wasted votes that happens when you're talking about star voting. And ultimately, you know, if it hasn't been used in an official election, I just don't think we know enough about it.
Thank you. You have raised some good points.
Good points. Thank you, Sol.
I'm not
All
sure
right.
I'm not sure there's really any good system.
Yeah, they all
For-
have some flaws.
For a three-member district. You know, keep in mind that when you have only 4 districts, that there are 170,000 residents in each district. You're not electing your community person.
Yeah. Kathy, we've got quite a few questions, so I'm going to move on. Thank you so much, though. You brought up some good points. Hank Robb, you have a question. Come on in.
Yes, I have 2 questions. The first one is, if I understand correctly, the way people in Portland, because I don't live in the Portland city limits, the way the people in Portland get someone to vote for in the general election is they have a primary in the spring. That's correct?
Mhm.
Now, if there is no primary in the spring, there has to be some method to get candidates, to get, say, the 5 people who are going to run in the district, or the 5 people that are going to run for mayor. And if I understand correctly, the mechanism to get these candidates is unspecified in the proposal that is being put forward. That's my first question. And the second is you broke up when you were giving the distinction between a city administrator and a city manager, and I would like to hear that distinction again.
Yeah, so I'll start off with the first question because I think it was a miscommunication in my presentation. So the 5 is referring to how many rankings you would be allowed on your ballot. So when you're looking at your ballot for your specific district, you can rank up to 5 candidates, even if there are 20 candidates, 15 candidates in the pool running for office in your district. So it's not limiting how many candidates are running in the race. It's limiting how many rankings you are allowed. So you would be able to say, out of those 15 candidates running in my district, I can only rank up to 5. So it's not, it doesn't change how many can run for office. It just changes how many you're actually allowed to rank. Does that make sense?
I think so, but so then, if I understand you correctly, if I were in such a district, I need to read up on all of the candidates, which might be as many as 15, or let's just take 15. But rather than 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, I'd have to read up on 15.
Yes, that is technically true. I will say that in jurisdictions in this country that use ranked choice voting, you actually do see an increase in voter education and voter literacy and understanding of the candidates. It encourages people to not only say, I'm going to study these 2 candidates and pick one of the 2 and then go with that. It does encourage people to understand more of the candidates' priorities. However, I think that's why the point of having only 5 rankings is that you don't have as much voter fatigue because you can just, parse out the candidates by whatever interest you feel the most connected to. So if you really feel connected to renters' rights, you can focus on the candidates that have that platform and then go from there. I will also say that what you see happening a lot in ranked choice voting campaigns, like Kit mentioned, is that the platforms and the way that candidates run campaigns do tend to be more issue specific. They're not as focused on, I'm better than candidate D because of these reasons. It's more, here's my platform, here are the issues I'm focused on. And what you also see happening is that candidates who have similar platforms, they end up really wanting to connect with the other candidates' voters because they know that they will benefit from being ranked as one of the other candidates' voters' top choices. So I think it becomes easier to identify, like, here are the candidates that are, running similar platforms and what issues they represent.
Thank you. And could you give me that distinction between city manager and city administrator?
Yes. So a city manager, they are also a non-elected position. However, they tend to have a lot more executive authority than a city administrator does. So a city administrator is directly supervised by the mayor. The mayor is considered their boss on a day-to-day basis. So, whatever they're working on, the mayor has a very close working relationship with them, whereas city managers have more independent authority, separate to the mayor, separate to the city council. So it's basically a version of a city manager, but it comes with a lot more oversight. City managers have less oversight than the city administrator would in this proposal.
And in this case, the direct oversight is always by the mayor rather than a member of the city council.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Ringa, you have a question. Come on in.
Yeah, I agree that the ranked choice proportional representation is a fair and viable one, especially for the cities. But I'm sort of thinking that suppose we extend it to this would mean that there will not be any particular constituency which they represent. Now, will that be what sort of effect will be there in the political system? Number one. The one other thing which you can think of is that normally the type of pork arrangements which individual Congress members make for the constituency would probably get somewhat diluted. Maybe it's a good thing, but we can compare it with, in the Senate. Senate, there are two people representing the same state, but then they don't compete at the same time. Whereas in the congressional one, they will be competing at the same time. So what sort of effect will be there if we try to extend this thing to the congressional members?
So what I'm hearing you say is the Senate, only one senator is elected at a time, where in the House, all representatives, we have 6 representatives at the House, they're elected at the same time.
You can have 3 or 4 members for a large district that do not represent a smaller district. So it has its own effects.
Yeah. Kid Sol, any thoughts on that question?
So,
yes, I'll say there's a bill in the in Congress called the Fair Representation Act that would change the way we elect state or representatives from each state to Congress, which would create bigger districts and would really improve our representation. Yeah. Also, Maine is already electing senators with ranked choice voting.
but easier for senators because one at a time, whereas for multiple members, it's a different types of issues coming.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute, Mike Brochet, here, hang on here. Mike Brochet in Friendly House, about would dark money contaminate ranked choice voting?
So I'll take that.
Okay.
So my friend thinks that's a great question, and it's a really important issue. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done here, and dark money is one of the things. So my friends in Australia tell me that they've used ranked choice voting there for 100 years, and dark money is not nearly as effective because you can't manipulate these second choice votes nearly as easily as you can with a winner take all election. An election where there's only 2 real choices, that can be manipulated, and it's particularly manipulated with attack ads, with negative ads. That's where so much of the dark money goes.
Right.
And so it helps in those 2 ways at the very least, by making it more difficult to manipulate elections with money, with big money, and also making the attack ads much less effective, because when you attack your opponents, you all lose. Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to close with one question. I'm hearing that Jules, thanks, Michael. Jules has a question. You had your hand up. Jules, can you come in? We just have a minute, though, so ask your question, please.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So what impact will RCV have on the Electoral College, which to this day is the most frustrating experience all of us have? 3 or 4 states determine the outcome. Not all the voting and all the other ins and outs. And Ralph Nader would have had a lovely time in this new system.
Yeah.
So are we going to really solve that once and for all if ranked choice voting becomes the standard? Coast to coast?
Great question.
That's another one of the things that needs work. The Electoral College needs work. The way that ranked choice voting would change that, would alter it somewhat, would influence it, is that if a state uses ranked choice voting for their presidential primary, the people would feel free to vote for a third party if they wanted, knowing that they'd have a backup choice. So in Florida in 2000, if they'd had ranked choice voting, the 19,000 people who voted for Ralph Nader could have had a backup choice.
Right.
The election was decided by, I don't know, 700 or so.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And so each state would be able to, they would still have the same electoral votes. Each state would still decide how to allocate their electoral votes. Most of them, send the whole shebang to one candidate. Maine divides them between, according to the proportion of people that voted. And so they have no power in the campaign. No one cares about campaigning in Maine. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This was so informative, ladies. Thank you so much for a great presentation. There is wonderful information in the chat between where to donate and where to volunteer. This wonderful video that explains a little bit more, about ranked choice voting when you have multiple people you're voting for. So yes, so thank you, ladies, so much.